So welcome, Performance Under Pressure followers. Welcome to this short little interview. Recently, I had one of our newer members get in touch with me, and his name is Dr. Sean Botha. Sean is a composer, author, researcher, performer, and he's the creator of the online course, the Listen program. And I thought I'd get in touch with him, have a bit of a chat, and we met up, and I thought, oh, this would be really interesting. We were talking about some interesting things. So I thought, well, why not make a little interview of it and share it with the online community? So without further ado, here is Dr. Sean Botha.
Yay.
Welcome, Sean. So I came across your website and checked it out and have read up a little bit about you. And do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and what you do and I know you've just finished your PhD and starting this program, and what do you do? Could you tell us a little bit about your background?
What do I do? Well, I feel like I do something of everything, really. I mean, everything started with music back in South Africa. And if I fast forwarded to right here, right now, I'd like to think of myself as kind of, multiple skills thrown into one person. And it gets tricky from time to time, but I mean, I love my writing. I love making music. I'm composing music, using that stream of consciousness idea instead of writing notes on a page. And then I love my research into anything. It can be physics, quantum physics, sound, silence, and everything else in between. So I feel like I'm a bit of a jack of all trades.
Yeah, when I was reading your bio, it was like, far, you've covered so many different things and so broad. And when you started talking quantum physics, I was like, oh, that's way over my head. But so could you explain a little bit about what sort of research have you been doing?
Well, it all started with an interest in music and emotion. And I thought that my creative work would take me into that very traditional music psychology research field. But it did exactly the opposite. It took me down a few little side roads like psychoacoustics, the spectral composers from the 1970s in France. And then it took me to John Cage and his work into silence. And then at some point, I realized, hold on, the answers that I'm looking for is in physics and mathematics and not in, the straightforward creative field. I need to bring that into the equation. And then I started doing my self-directed research into physics. But my PhD itself, that is in simple terms in sound and silence. But there's a guy called Dennis Smalley, and he created spectromorphology, and it was his work that informed my entire thesis with my doctoral research.
Okay, what is spectrum? What was the word that you used?
Spectromorphology.
Yeah.
It's a lengthy word, but it's basically just a fancy way or an academic way of saying we're looking at how we're going to work with sound, describe sound, and how do we use it in music terms, really.
Okay.
That's that he built on the work of Pierre Schaeffer, who also worked on description of sound, but his work was a bit more complex, whereas Dennis Smalley kind of made it more tangible
In what way? How do you mean?
In terms of the terminologies that he uses and the way it applies to electronic music, but also how it applies to string music. So he didn't just attach it to anything that's electronic. So he made it user-friendly, so to speak.
Okay.
And then it's kind of gets easier to talk about. So when you look at your recording software, where it says delay, release, grain, resonance, all those terminologies. He would have had a big influence on those things that in our recording software as well.
Okay. Right.
So
Okay, that makes sense
it's
now.
quite
Yeah.
interesting.
Wow, that sounds super complex, but super interesting. Wow.
It is.
Okay. And so growing, so did you grow up in South Africa and start your musical journey there?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
What
So
did you start playing to start with?
I started playing guitar
Okay.
after I was introduced to a South African singer who's been quite instrumental in my creative life. She's a female singer, and she's really made a lot of inroads in the South African music industry. So after I was introduced to her, it was like a done deal. And I was just like, yeah, I want to learn to play guitar, and it just snowballed from there. So it went from the guitar to piano to classical guitar, and then there was a stop. I took a break because I had to go and do something that will bring in an income because I didn't know how to break into the music industry in South Africa.
Yeah, right.
So I
Okay.
took a 17-year break,
Right. Okay. Wow.
and it was too long.
Yeah.
It was too long. And then I went back to my music, and then I kind of got stuck into it again. And now we're here.
And so was it after that 17-year break, then you got into research, or was that, were you back into performing then and then research followed after that?
Well, the research is interesting because when I did my nursing training, we did a research project where I did most of the writing aspect of it, and obviously looking into, the articles and the work that would back up the work. And I didn't think that that would spark any kind of interest further down the road, but it clearly had some kind of impact on my way of thinking
Mhm.
when I went back to my music, because there was still that relationship, that kind of scientific component and relationship between the creative work and, how does it all come together.
Mm.
So there was definitely a big influence,
Mm.
whether I was aware of it or not.
Yeah, okay.
Uh,
I've often heard researchers say it's not research, it's me search. They're trying to work out themselves and how they tick, and then they research in that direction. Does that apply to you?
yes, in so many ways,
Yeah.
it was that's like a book on its own.
Yeah.
But
I'm
if I had
sure.
to boil it down into something straightforward, I think somehow I was trying to figure out what my own brain was trying to do. So it took me to get into my doctoral work to realize, hold on, there are layers of issues here that needs to be addressed. So when it came to the output of the work, I realized, okay, hold on, what I was making is something that would be of benefit for my brain, my physical body, and didn't realize that I was making something that other people can use as well.
Mm,
And
yeah.
that's why the Listen program came about, because my brain needed it.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that as well. So did that just come straight out of your research, or was that sort of side by side? You were developing this program and researching at the same time, or how did that come about?
That was a that was like a side by side. So imagine three people walking next to each other. That's basically what happened. Like, there was me, then there was the research,
Mhm.
then there was this other component, which is quite interesting because I was at a symposium talking about my work, and somebody said to me, but how does your work apply in the real world?
Mm.
And my brain must have gone away and decided, without me realizing it, my brain decided, okay, you want something for the real world? I'll give you something for the real world. I'll show you.
Yeah.
So it all kind of went in tandem with one another. And then the Listen program kind of became like um, a little side outcome
Yeah.
that I didn't realize I could apply to so many different fields in everyday life.
Yeah, right. I think
So
that's what I found really really interesting with your work. I mean, there's so many researchers I've read that they create great research, but then the practical application of it is not there, or it's really hard
Yeah.
to understand it and apply it. Whereas with you, I think it's fantastic that you've created the Listen program to do
Mhm.
exactly that, which is fantastic.
Well, this is the thing, right? Because what happens is in the research space, it's your STEM fields which normally have really good output that's applicable in the real world in military terms or other kind of real world spaces, whereas music tend to stay in a very secluded space.
Mm.
And so you kind of have to have that mindset of, yes, I'm going to become an academic, I'm going to become a teacher, then a professor, I'm going to stay in that space and keep researching in that field. But you got to ask yourself, how much of that can I take into the real world?
Mm.
And the more of it you can take into the real world, the better.
Mm.
Because people forget that it's the creatives that's built all these structures around us,
Mm.
whether it's televisions,
Mm.
food,
Mm.
it doesn't matter. There's always a creative brain behind it.
I think COVID definitely showed the pandemic definitely showed that. It's like everyone then started to become more
Mm.
creative because they sort of needed that.
Precisely,
Yeah.
precisely.
So with the Listen program, so what does it involve? So like, what is it? What's in the course, and why is it useful, and who's it sort of designed for?
so essentially, the program is designed to adapt itself to the person. So when we're talking about what's in it, it's about what you bring into the program for yourself. So the idea or the premise of it is you choose a sound that you feel the most drawn to, that you feel you can listen to for a couple of minutes, and you take your body and your brain down the 7-step little process to quiet itself down or focus yourself. And then the outcome of that is multifold. So for everybody, it's different. In my case, when I started to make the program, I noticed for me, it quieted my head.
Mhm.
But I also didn't know at that point in time that I myself am neurodiverse.
Mhm.
So I only were able to connect the dots, as time went by and as I kind of refined the program itself.
Mhm.
Whereas for somebody else, when you look at the 7 steps of it, the 7 steps of it can either make you sleep, or it can help you focus, or it can help you to really heighten your listening skills as a musician,
Yeah.
especially when you're working in a band or an ensemble, because you have to know what's going on with the rest of your performers.
Mhm.
So with the rest of those performers, if you can really connect with them by really listening, not pretending to listen, but
Mm.
really listening,
Mm.
the performance itself becomes, you know, far more tangible for yourself and your audience. And then you can add on to that, even before you go into that performing space, you can use the program then to quiet your head before you go on stage.
Mm.
So again, it's multifold.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And
So
yeah,
for
I definitely
me,
think it really shows as well how listening is a skill that can be developed. It's
well,
not
this
just
is the thing.
yeah, it's not just something that's the great musicians have or they were born with. It's like it's definitely that
Yeah.
process of developing that skill.
And the thing is, the idea behind the program is to take the person back to the beginning, in the sense of, okay, before we got all these phones
Mhm.
and tablets and computers and televisions and video games, how were we able to connect with somebody else, right? So if you can answer that question, great. If you can't, then it tells me, okay, we need to step away from technology and go through a listening process so you can kind of reconnect back to that basic fundamental aspect of listening.
Mm.
And then once you've done that, then you can take the next step after that. And the outcome for that, specifically for a musician, is improved ear training, improved musicianship, better outcomes when it comes to grades after you've done a examination where you quite literally doing a recital. So it's, again, it's multifold for the musician, but then we can translate it into other areas of our lives. So, but if I want to stay on point just for the musician, it's not just about what's happening for them when they're studying music. It's what's happening for them once they're finished their studies, and once they're really just in that performance space and they're performing every weekend. You know, the program applies in that space as well, because you want to be on your game and on the ball when you're on stage. So how do you get yourself there?
Yeah.
And that's where the program can help. It's not a guarantee, but it's something that can help you to hone in on what matters in that moment.
Well,
If that
I
makes
think as
sense.
well that focus on what matters and directing your focus to those things that matter to you as a
Yeah.
performer, I think that helps you naturally with your focus and attention anyway. So I think highlighting that and then developing those skills to get yourself there, I think it sounds like a super useful program that you've got.
Well, this is the thing, and it doesn't need phones or anything fancy to do it. All it asks you to do is to become aware of your environment, become of your own energy, become aware of what it is you need in a given moment. Pick something that you feel you can listen to for a while and hone in on that, and see how your body and your brain connects up with each other, but also how it connects with the sound, and then how it creates this little triangulation really between the three, because we're constantly surrounded by sound. We can't get away from it,
Yeah.
but we need to learn how to navigate it. And as a musician, when you're performing, you're not just navigating the sound that's happening on stage, you're navigating the person talking at the back of the hall in the audience. You're navigating the person sneezing in the front row
Or opening a
without
lolly wrapper
realizing.
or something like that.
Yeah, well, yes. So it's not just about what's happening in your immediate environment. There's things happening out on the fringes of what you're doing as well.
So, do you have something, just a short little activity or exercise that people could do very simply straight away that could help them with their focus and concentration on stage?
Well, essentially, what you can do is the exercise is the program itself, because it's 7 steps.
Yeah.
So you can condense it into doing it for a minute, or you can condense it into doing it over a period of 5 minutes or an hour, depending on how much time you've got. So you can condense it down. So the idea is if you've only got 2 minutes, you close your eyes and you quite literally force yourself to listen to everything that's happening around you. You pick a sound and feel your body, feel how your lungs and your heart absorbs that sound.
Yeah.
And feel how your muscles are absorbing that sound. And feel how that sound is actually moving in tandem with your body. And then you open up your eyes and you see where you're at. And if you need to do it again, you do it again.
Yeah.
And you do it as often as you want to. And when you're ready, then call me up and we can start looking at the advanced program, because the advanced program is super intense, but so worthwhile, especially for musicians.
Yeah.
So it's the same exercise every time. It doesn't matter if you can only do your external environment, pick one sound and just focusing on that one sound, because you don't have any more time. You've done probably just enough to get you to the next step in terms of what you're required to do beyond that point. So if you have time, do all 7 steps. If you only have time up until step 4 or 3, go for it.
Yeah, right.
There are no rules.
That's great that it's a flexible model like that as well, like time dependent, and obviously,
Yeah.
people don't have sometimes an hour to sit there and do specific exercises. So that's great that it's flexible in that regard.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really fascinated by your work and your research, and fascinated by the program that you've created. So, if anyone is interested, hopefully all the PUP online followers are interested, but if they are, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, they can. I'm always very easy to contact via email. So that's always the easiest way to get to reach me.
And what's your email address? We can put this in the comments as well.
So that's hsbothaproductions@gmail.com.
Great.
And yeah, that's the easiest way. I can be called, but there's never a guarantee that I will be answering, every phone call, because, I'm constantly,
You're a busy man.
everywhere. So I kind of have to, I call people back as soon as I can, but email is always the best way. So yeah.
And you've also got listenprogram.com on your screen there as well. So
Yes.
hopefully you'll get a flood of emails and correspondence after this is
Well, I'm always open. I'm always open to help. So that's the main thing, I think. So
fantastic. Oh. Well, thank you so much, Sean. That was great. Really interesting, really fascinating work that you're doing. So hopefully we can see more of you in the near future.
yeah, look, there is a couple of things coming. I've got a few things slated for the year, because my creative work is kind of come to a point where it's kind of all linking up now. So I've got semi-autobiographical documentaries that I'll be releasing this year, and that will then lead into first short film, and then after that feature film. So yeah.
And you've got a couple of books as well, I've seen. So you can check out the websites.
Heaps of stuff coming.
Oh, totally. God. Well, thank you so much, Sean. I think we'll leave it there, but really great to meet up with you again today, and yeah, look forward to reading more about your work.
Awesome. Sounds good to me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.